Hello all, welcome back to our Ansible lecture. So in this lecture, basically we will talking about separating the playbook for the variable. So in the last lecture, we have covered the basic playbook of the Ansible and install some dependencies using the Ansible playbook. So in this lecture, we will create one or two sample playbook more, and then we will use that concept for the removing the variable from the playbook, and we will create the separate file for that. So for this, basically, if we open that playbook, so currently I have the two playbooks now. That is the one, and we can focus on this playbook only. So that is the playbook that we are installing the DB application in the application. So that name is, we can see the deploy the dev or DB application. Inside the task, we need to install some dependencies. So we have two types of the dependency. First one is we are installing the Python. So we just name the name and the item and the state, we can say the installed, and the bit item we can see the Python. So basically we are want to install the Python dependencies here. So it's a kind of the loop that we can define in the playbook. So if we want to install the multiple dependencies, just we need to list down here and we can add one more dependency. So that is the way that we can define the multiple loops in the YAML file. So here we are installing the Python. In the second, we are installing the SQL database because we require Python and the SQL both for our application. So here, just we provide the yum and the item, that is kind of basically providing the loop variable, and state is installed, means that will always be installed. So if you restart the server or refresh the server, it will automatically install the same. And the dependencies we want here, MySQL server and the MySQL client. So we have installed the dependencies of Python and then SQL server, and then we are starting the SQL server. So for that, we are just starting the services. These all the things are available in the Ansible documentation. So I will show you that also. So here we have to install the service. Service name is MySQL, service is started, and we have enabled the service. Then we are creating the database. So just create the database application, and we are providing the DB name and the state is present. And then we are creating the DB user and the DB user password and the privilege. So for that, all the parameter, we no need to memorize it. Just go to the Ansible documentation. And if you search for, go to the top and search, if you want to create the, suppose MySQL user, you want to create, just search for MySQL user, open the community document and just scroll down. So here is the things, if you are creating the username with the database Bob and the password. So just we need to use the same code, just provide the database name, password, and the privilege and the status present. The similar way we have defined the database user here, database name, password, privilege, and all these things. So if instead of this, if suppose we are creating the user as a Bob and the password is here 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so that is the playbook basically. So that will install the Python SQL server, start the SQL server, create the database, and then create a database user. Again, we need to create one more user, suppose, or we want to change that username and the password. Then we need to come up to this playbook only, and then we need to update this username and the password. So hard coding of this kind of the variable is not a best practice in the Ansible. So for this, Ansible provide a mechanism using that we can remove this hard coding and we can use the variable value from that particular folder. So for that, if you open this image, so that is the structure that is provided by the Ansible. So inside the inventories, basically we have two folders. We have groups folder and we have the host folder. So basically we can create a two folder for the group and the host. Inside that we can define our variables. So if you are using the host file here, so if you can create a host folder, inside that if you define the variable, then it will, Ansible will directly go to the host folder and pick up the variable for them. And if you are using the groups, then you need to create the groups folder, and then you need to define the variable for that. So for that, if I open my project, first we need to define the folder name called host.wars. So it's mandatory in the Ansible to create a folder. If you are separating the variable, First, we need to create the folder called host.vars in the same folder directory. So Ansible will directly look for the folder called host.vars only, and then it will search for the variable that is present for the host and the groups. So folder structure is, first we need to create the host.vars files, and then we need to create the groups.yml or the host.yml based on the needs. So automatically Ansible will search for the host.vars folder. So in our folder structure, here we are using that playbook. So now we need to create the host.vars. So I just rename this folder is group.var. So just need to rename to the host.vars only. Inside the host.vars, I will rename this folder. Just a second. So that is the host.var. Inside that host.var, we can create two files, host.yml and groups.yml. Currently, we are using the host file only. So we just create the host.yml file. And in the playbook, we are using basically the three things. One is the username and second one is the password. So just we can go to the host.yml file and we can create the DB name, username and password. So DB name, and suppose in case we can say is Bob and the password is 12345. Okay. So that thing we have created the host.yml file and we have created the variable. So Ansible, when you run that playbook file, Ansible automatically check for the host.vars folder and come to the host.yml file and then check for the value. The same value that we are using here, we need to mention that value in the playbook as well. That's the only way that Ansible will find that value we need to use for this particular variable. So instead of wow, just we need to parameterize this. The parameterize on the Ansible, just we need to use a double bracket and the name and the bracket close. The similar way that we are using for the item in the loop, similar way we can use for the variable here also. So just we need to define the DB user, and the similar way, the same name we can use for the DB password as well. So go to the playbook here, and then set of 1234 double bracket. DB password. So that variable is parameterized now. And the similar way, we can parameterize for the DB name as well if you want to create the multiple databases. So DB name we have parameterized, we have parameterized DB user and the DB password. So whenever we run this playbook, Ansible will search this parameters there. It will come into the host.var files and go to the host.yml file and search for the variable value is already present. Then it will use the employee DB, the DB name, Bob as a username and password as a 12345. So using that way, we can remove the hard coding from the Ansible playbook and parameterize using the host.vars file. So basically for that, only the things that we need to remember, that folder name should be host.vars only, because Ansible will search for this folder only. And then we can create the groups.yml or the host.yml. If you're using the host file, then we can use only the host name. Basically, we can define the host.yml. And if you're creating the group like a DB group or some groups are there, then we can create the same structure in the groups.yml file also. So that is the way we can define. And then, so the similar way I have defined here also, so you can refer this document. So that is the way we can remove the hard coding from the Ansible playbook and create the separate file for the same. So that's all. If you have any query, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn email is given on the description box. So thank you. Thanks for your time.